This is the third webinar in the COSMA webinar series. We have been following the suggestions of our members and the kinds of things that they are most interested to talk about and hear about. And we have been fortunate so far to be able to take advantage of our own members as presenters. I think that makes it a little less formal, and maybe when we feel like it's just us, we feel a little more relaxed about fessing up to some of the things that are our greatest challenges. And I do want to thank you all, those of you who wrote back and told us what your operating systems were and what your greatest challenges were. Man, after about the third response, Erika and I agreed we could do about 3 webinars just based on that. So anyway, thank you very much for helping us shape this. I may or may not have told you, my name is Ruth Ann Rugg. I am the transitional leader for COSMA. I also work part-time for the Texas Association of Museums, which is what puts me in lovely Houston in this terrific generic hotel room. Please enjoy the background. But we were talking before everyone came on about the fall-like weather we've had here, because we've had a little rain and it is only 96 in Houston. So that's a great blessing. I am grateful to TAM for loaning us their webinar platform. I appreciate that. We have the benefit of using a lot of resources from a lot of different states, and that has been enormously helpful as COSMA has been getting to rolling. So I don't want to take up too much time. I will tell you that we can ask some questions at the end, but I want to introduce to you Erika Sanger, who is the Executive Director of MANY, the Museum Association of New York. Erika is terrific. If you don't know her yet, you are gonna want to know her after this. I told her I was going to let her introduce herself, not because I'm lazy, no, but because I'm interested always to hear what my colleagues think the important thing to say about themselves. So with no further ado, I'm going to shrink my little smiling face and hand it over to Erika. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ruth Ann. Hey, everybody. Oh, now I see what we're doing. Let's see. So I have been in the museum field for a long time. I wanted to say about 30 years ago, I was among the first generation of museum professionals who were trained to use computers. So I am someone who spans the analog world into the digital world. I'm probably among the last generation to actually remember card files and handwritten calendars, and I have to say, I don't know if you can see this behind me. I still use them. I still need to see everything that we're doing in every place that we're going. I got my start in museums and learning in museums when I was in college, actually. I went to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts, and the art studio building was under construction. So they rented the art studios at the Worcester Art Museum. And as a studio artist, if we were sitting around and our professors said, you know, if you're bored, you don't know what to do, just get up and go into the galleries. And so I began to learn what it was like to learn in a museum, and that led me to a career in museum education and fundraising. And in terms of technology and approaching technology, I mostly saw the tools that were available to me as they were growing and tried to understand how I could use those tools to do my job a little better. So I'm mostly self-trained, coached by other staff members or consultants. They're really big gaps in what I know, and I try to fill them in. But I've developed interactive tools with the University of North Carolina's School of Education. And also I've been a human-computer interface guest lecturer at Rensselaer Polytech up here in Troy. So I learned content management system for websites from website developers who I was working with. And it made developing the New York Museum Association Association's website, and I saw someone else was on Wild Apricot, but it made it much easier for us to do that. I want to start out by saying that we're going to talk about computer hygiene, you know, like what you should do, like brush your teeth every day. And if you think about computer maintenance like that, it's not as daunting for me. Because it's not a matter of if your technology will fail, it's a matter of when your technology will fail. So I'm just going to share my screen for a little bit, and then I will jump back in when I get into some storytelling. So I think you can all see the screen now. Is that correct? Can someone jump on the audio and just make sure that you can see the screen and not me? Should I shut off my webcam? Let's try that. Yes, we're good. I think that's good. Okay. Yes, yes. So that's interesting. Let's do it this way. Great. So the Museum Association was founded against New York State Charter in January of 1962, and the New York State chartering process is important for recognition from the state and for funding. We're one of the first professional organizations supported by our New York State Council on the Arts. We actually predate the NEH, the NEA, and our Humanities New York Council. In 2014, the Museum Association merged with an organization that at that time was called MuseumWise. It was formerly the Upstate History Alliance. And it created a service organization that serves the whole state. So let's see if that. Great, now it's working. Okay, so that is New York State. I am now in Troy. I'm speaking from Troy. Buffalo, if you see where Niagara Falls is. I don't think my little screen dot is showing. So Buffalo, Niagara Falls, all the way to the left-hand side, and East Hampton, Long Island, all the way to the right-hand side, that little blue turquoise dot hanging out under Connecticut, Rhode Island. If I was to drive from East Hampton to Buffalo, it would probably take me about 10 hours, if that gives you a sense of the length of the state. So that's Manny's membership. We crossed the 600 mark in terms of members for the very first time at the end of July. And that is how the Museum Association is divided up. So we are pretty evenly distributed. Our lowest numbers in the northern region, the southern region, and the Mohawk Valley. And, the northern region is in green, the Mohawk Valley is in purple, and the southern tier is in orange. And those are just the areas of the state where there is the least amount of population. I have a friend who runs an organization up there in the green, and I told him that I had 2 traffic lights in my hometown, and he laughed and said there are 2 traffic lights in the entire county, if that gives you a sense of how remote this green area can be. Oops, it hit one twice. So I'm going to my 5 kind of regular things for computer hygiene, and I'll just go through these really quickly. I can email this list to anyone, but it's really most important to keep your hardware, keep your computer in good working condition using the most up-to-date hardware that you can afford. Number 2, protect your computer against malware. Malware is both viruses as well as spyware. You know, keep your software up to date. Why is it important to keep your software up to date? Because if your software is up to date, chances are that you might be more resistant to malware. Keep backup of your files in multiple locations, and even, you know, perhaps on the cloud in some ways. We'll count the cloud as a location for the sake of this webinar. And then if you know how and you have time, do it yourself. And I'll run through these again later. But I think what I need to do is hit escape to get out of that, and then I can do this, and maybe it'll turn back on my camera. Great. Okay. So, and then I'll turn that off. How's that? Are we good? You should see me. Yes. Okay. So I am going to share with you my disaster story. What is my disaster story and how does it relate to the 5 rules that I just went through? And I'm going to try to run through this to address a couple of the questions that were sent, but I think what you're going to find is that this disaster story will touch on all of the comments that we were sent and provide a good warning. So all the rules were broken and now a year later completely resolved and thousands of dollars and hundreds of man hours later. I'm gonna start with rule 5. If you know how and you have time, do it yourself. I took on the role of director at the Museum Association of New York in August of 2016. And I took about 6 weeks to transition because I knew I needed some time off. And the computer consultants that we worked with at the Albany Institute were being really generous. And they said to me, well, you know, let us run the backup files for you. You have lots of other things to do. And I was like, oh, okay, Ben, you can run the backup files, but it's really big. I think you're gonna need like 64, gigabyte thumb drive. And they were like, really? And I said, yeah, really, there's a lot of files there. And they said, oh, okay, we got it. Long story short, I lost all my emails, all the files transferred. That's great. A beautiful little thumb drive, and the file to the email was corrupted. So I didn't have any emails. I came in here without a single contact. How did I resolve it? In my very first e-blast, I asked everyone I know to send me an email to my new. And that was fun because then I was able to start work a whole lot of emails to me, and I was able to capture everyone's contact information like that. Uh, so Ruth Ann asked me to talk about, and be as frank as I can. So I walked into this position, there were 45,000 emails in the inbox of the director at mannyonline.org. Of those, about 16,000 of them were unread. 2 years later, I'm finally turning my attention to that this summer. We're down to 800 unread emails and about 28,000 in the inbox. And it's been a really, really instructive process to go back to 2011 and send them all through archives and read ones that I know were interesting parts of the history of the organization. And then, not read others. So it's taken a bit of time this summer, but I believe it was a good investment of that time. So we'll go back to rule number 1. Keep your computer in good working condition. Use the most recent hardware your organization can afford. So in August in 2016, the Manny office had 2 PC laptops, one almost new running Windows 10, one 6 years old running Windows 8, a 7-year-old MacBook that was stuck trying to restart, and a 5-year-old first generation iPad mini. Not the most up to date except for one of the PC laptops. Rule number 3, keep your software up to date. So the software and Manny's communications were running on a lot of different platforms. And I'll just give you a quick run through of what that situation was. Membership was managed on eTapestry, which is a Blackbaud product, but the organization hadn't been able to afford any of the eTapestry updates in 3 years. but they were doing an export of eTapestry quarterly as a way to bring in membership dues. So at least it was being backed up through Excel exports. Finance was run on QuickBooks desktop that was stored on an external drive because they believed they couldn't afford to move to QuickBooks Online. Registration for the conference and programs and anything that we had to charge was done on a custom interface between QuickBooks and our website content management system, which was programmed on Drupal for any of you program geeks. So Drupal and QuickBooks doesn't talk to each other. It took a special program to make them talk to each other, which then anytime I wanted to make a change in a registration form, I had to go call the consultant who every time I picked up the phone cost me $100. Our communications were running on another platform from Constant Contact. So if someone became a new member, you had to then export them onto Constant Contact as a third database system. So our content management system was managed by a company in Cooperstown, New York, which is about an hour and a half west of us. And they are the ones who are also running backups of the website. So we were lucky in that our Gmail and some Google Docs were serving as the backup. But there was no other electronic backups ever done, except for the most current eTap export. Membership backup was on Xeroxes of forms that were sent in that were kept chronological by receipt. So if someone asked me if their membership was due, and I couldn't get onto the website. Oh yeah, the other thing about the website was there was only one user login. So if my other staff person was on the website, I couldn't log in to see what was on the website. And that was also for eTapestry, one user login. So two of us full-time in the office could not work on the same platform at the same time. Okay, so back to rule number one, keep your computer in good working condition. I took the MacBook and the iPad to the Apple Store. I wiped them both clean and began to use them exclusively for my personal use. No one else had the passwords. I left the PC laptops to the other staff person and to the accountant. And then I began to gather the passwords strategically. I began to say, oh, hey, do you know what the password is for that? And what password do you use when you want to log into QuickBooks? And what password do you use? And, you know, and every couple of days I'd go, oh, hey, you know, I want to log into my State Arts Council website. What's the password? And so very slowly over time, I took a list that had about 15 passwords and information onto it. And I created a universal password list, but not putting my passwords on it. And that was really important because I had seen a leadership transition that happened where a director was hired and he conducted the entire business of the museum from his iPhone, from his personal Gmail. Notes were taken on the iPhone. And when he left the organization 15 months later, he took the entire 15 months of work product with him, leaving absolutely nothing in the organization to refer to, and no one knew how to get into his files, and it was a mess. So it's important to share things that you can share. So there was a former board member of the Museum Association of New York who was a current board member of the Albany Institute of History and Art. And I called her and I said, hey, come to lunch in Troy. And she walked in to the office and she said, Erika, but where's your technology? And I said, oh my God, you're looking at it. And so she made a personal donation as a pledge for 2017 that when she could write a check and we could purchase we could purchase Apple products. So we were very much looking forward to that. Okay, so keep your software up to date, which is rule 3. I began by backing up and updating the operating systems and doing software updates for the PCs. I registered for TechSoup. I downloaded everything I could for the least amount of money that I could from TechSoup and moved forward. After I've been here about 3 months, I had to let my other staff person go. It was not a good fit at all. It was someone who could translate Old English and Old French and was very art historical, but she couldn't add 3 numbers in her head, and I really, really needed a strong administrator. And it was just a very difficult decision. But over the course of the 3 months that I was working with her, I had gotten every password. Not in a big way, but very slowly, bit by bit. And it actually allowed me to gain control over the information in a way that I hadn't gotten control before. So I was alone through March 2017, and then I was able to hire a part-time staff person. By then, I had gotten one of my father's old iMacs. I was using my MacBook as well as the MacBook that we had resuscitated here in the office. We kept the one, the old PCs to access the e-tapestry and another of the old PCs to access QuickBooks. And then I had the PC laptop for my accountant who comes in one morning a week and the intern that I had working here. So we were keeping the office going. We were using e-tapestry as we could, and calling the website hosts to do what they could for us. But it was kind of slow and torturous. By then, the board had been discussing to move to Wild Apricot. We had begun investigating and made that plan for some time. We had thought late fall of 2017. So somewhere along the line in July of 2017, the laptop, that was the oldest laptop, got infected with a virus. And it was because the accountant had to leave it on so that she could log on through Log Me In to access the desktop QuickBooks. And I didn't know that it had been left on. And anyway, long story short, virus, and it took that computer down. So I had been working with a computer consultant who was fortunately just a few blocks away in Troy for many years at the Albany Institute. And I called them up and I went, ah! And they said, okay, bring it over. We'll take a look at it for you. And very graciously, they took a look at it. They were like, it's just all corrupted. It's all messed up. And we were able to run a backup of the files. And they did that on a new thumb drive for me, and we backed up the files, and we sent that off to the goodbye place where old computers go. But then I took that thumb drive and I took the QuickBooks, the hard drive that was running QuickBooks, and I put it into the relatively new PC laptop running Windows 10 that was kept updated. And inadvertently, I transferred the virus onto the newer laptop. So that 2 weeks later, the newer PC with all of the files crashed. And along with that crash, it crashed QuickBooks. So That was a bad day. Because someone said in their email about their disasters, there were tears. There were a lot of tears. Um, and the QuickBooks information about the organization was not recoverable. The files over the past year that I had not uploaded to iCloud were not recoverable. All in all, I lost probably about 3 months of things recoverable. Everything that I emailed to other people, we did recover, which was a happy thing. Everything that I had uploaded to the cloud was recoverable, which was a happy thing. But I'm sure one day I'm going to go, now what happened to that document? And I'm not going to be able to find it anywhere. So after some scrambling, we called our auditor. The auditor had run a full QuickBooks backup as part of her audit process in May. So our accountant only had to reconstruct about 10 weeks worth of financial data. That cost us about $1,000 and quite a lot of effort on my part and the accountant's part. But she was able to reconstruct everything. And, people who were like, oh, it's so expensive to do an audit. That audit and that backup that auditor ran was worth every penny that we paid the auditor that year. So we were down to my personal MacBook, the old MacBook, and I called up my donor and I said, oh my God, is there any way that you could write the check? And she said, absolutely. And I went to the Apple store and I bought 2 iMacs and a new iPad, and we downloaded all of our software from TechSoup. We also found out that TechSoup has online QuickBooks at a discount, which is very important that we know that as of now. So where are we? So we have an iCloud account that we pay $2.99 for $2.99 a month for 2 terabytes of data, more than everything and anything that I can store on there on behalf of the Museum Association. We are now on wild apricot, and someone had sent a note about their wild apricot crashing. So we do a wild apricot data export at least once a month, which only exports the data, our membership data, our registration data. It doesn't back up any of the design elements. But I liked the solution that someone suggested to use a whole website backup system. I'm just not sure that that's a good solution for us right now, because I think we could reconstruct the pages relatively easily. I may be wrong, and we're going to investigate that. We do external hard drive backups. So there's an external hard drive backup for now. We have 3 iMacs. We've grown from just me in the dark days of the winter of 2016, 2017 to a full-time Museum Association administrator and a full-time social media marketing person who's only with us on a 1-year grant, but we're doing everything we can to extend her time with us. And so we each have an iMac. We have the really old iPad, which is limping along. We have the newer iPad, which when I travel, that's about all I take with me, unless I'm doing a presentation, and I'm even thinking of not traveling with my laptop this fall. We'll see what happens. So external hard drives are sitting on everyone's desk. We also have a copy of our external hard drive at my house. And look at that, troubleshooting tips. Would you like to stop sharing your webcam and hide other webcams? No, I don't think so. Um, so at my house, which is about 8 miles away from our office, and then one of my board members agreed to take a copy of the backup once a year. And he keeps a hard drive in his office, and then he has such a large network at his museum that he also uploaded it to his network if something happened. So we are all belts and suspenders here. We are backed up as much as we possibly can because of that digital disaster. I'm a lot more confident in what we're doing and how we're doing it. I still have, I know I don't back everything up perhaps as often as I should, but I do have a note in my calendar, which is still, I go paper and I go Google Calendar, run the backup. And it does take time, and I will do it. I will set it to go. I'll walk a couple blocks and get myself a cup of coffee. I'll get on the phone, I'll make a phone call while I'm running the backup. And sometimes if I'm doing a full backup, it will take 2 hours, but I believe it's worth it. So I might have gone a little faster. I don't like to relive those dark days. And I know everyone has, we got some really great questions online. I just think I touched on all the answers. So if someone wants to turn off my audio or turn on the chat box and ask any questions. Ruth Ann, was there anything that you wanted me to touch on that I didn't touch on, that we talked about?
I just wonder, even though we were all muted, when
Yeah.
you said you transferred everything, including the virus, did you hear the audible gasp?
No, I heard nothing.
All across the country, we were all going,
yes.
Oh my God. Because,
I know.
Because how would you think to avoid that? I mean, really.
Unavoidable.
I think you're very brave to share the nightmare stories, but they are meaningful to us because we have all done these things. Yeah. The things that I wrote down was, don't forget to check TechSoup. You know, there are some great deals on TechSoup. The other thing I wrote down is hug the auditor, because you know we gripe about the audits. They are very difficult to pull together all the stuff and get it over there, and you know all that stuff, but that sort of saved your neck, and it could probably save our necks too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if our participants here have a question, and if you do, here's what you need to do. Go to the menu that says attendees and find your name and tap there in the little, where the little hand is, or in the little question, and I will know to go down to your question or to unmute you so you can ask a question.
I also have the chat box open.
Okay, there you go.
I don't know if it's, people could use a chat box.
Well, if not, they're overwhelmed by all the stories you have told. Let me ask a question then while everyone's thinking.
Sure.
You know, some of us work at organizations that have been around for a very, very long time, and we have got lots of paper records. And there's always someone with helpfulness on their mind who says, why don't you scan all that stuff and let's digitize all that stuff. There was a question that we had gotten in advance about, what if you have these paper files and they're spread out? They're, you know, your office may be at the volunteer board director's house or that sort of thing. How did you rely on your paper records at some point? And do you have any suggestions about how to deal with paper in the digital era?
Yeah. So I have 50 something years of paper. I don't know, can you see the files behind me? So there's like stacks, but there's also, I mean, paper is a problem because I also have, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 file cabinets worth of paper in the attic of this art center that we have pledged to take down. And we have a records management plan in our bylaws. And so we cleaned out the files behind me. I'd say they're about a third of those file drawers are empty based on the record management plan. We threw out a lot. People used to keep a lot more than they actually really need. So we had a beautiful volunteer who just retired from the New York State Park Service. She was in the interpretation division and was helping other museums around the state who are Park Service affiliated with their programs and records. And she knew all about records management. And she's been working for 2 years on our records. And we keep a giant recycle bin by that table behind me. Audrey's not here today. And Audrey goes through and we just toss. We don't know what we're going to do, but my assumption, what I have found very valuable, and the one thing that I have digitized is board minutes, because those are very important to the history. And as I've gone through those 45,000 emails since 2011, that's been what I've been downloading and sending, is the official copies of the board minutes. Those are the most important documents. So that's where I would say to start, but we are also dealing with 50 years of papers. And, you know, we are in a building with a partner that we've been renting from since the 1970s. So they are very gracious in giving us a very low rent compared to other rents in the region and storing our paperwork for us. But, you know, historically, it would be a problem if I had to move all those files down into my space. We're going to do it slowly, methodically, but it will have to happen. So we're prepared.
Okay. Well, here's a question from Cindy Sweet in Iowa. Hi, Cindy. She says, hi, Erika. Just a question. Is there a reason you don't back up online to a service like Carbonite?
So we're backing up to iCloud. We're not backing up the website to Carbonite. We are just approaching our 7 months on Wild Apricot, and we have not been doing that. But it might be once I got that someone else from the COSMA membership backs up to Carbonite. I came in yesterday morning and said to Rachel, so yeah, because it's easy enough for us. I mean, frankly, all of my files are now on an iCloud drive. I don't, you know, I keep very little on my desktop. I keep very little on the computer itself. But the website should probably, you know, all the design is probably to a point where we should be doing that now in a different way. Yeah.
All right, here's another one. This is our friend Della in Alaska. Can you share your bylaws with your records management plan in it?
Sure.
She said, yeah. Well, that was an easy one.
Yeah. How should I share it? Should I send it to you, Ruth Ann?
Yeah, send it to me, because we have the ability to send things out to everybody who was on the webinar.
Yep.
We also have I don't know, I think that's probably the best. Okay.
So I can also, I mean, I'm happy to share it. You can probably share it to the COSMA website if there's not a records management plan up there already. Yeah.
Okay, here's Cindy again. I can attest that I have backed up to Carbonite for years and it works great. Okay. I've had a slight digital disaster too and had to download everything again to a new computer, but she did. Cindy, I don't know, are you on a computer with a microphone? If I unmute you, can you tell the story?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you
Okay.
hear me? Yeah. So yeah,
Tell the story.
carbonite has been a godsend for us. Can you hear me?
No.
Yes, we
Now,
can hear
now I
you.
can. Yeah.
Okay. I've subscribed to carbonite for, I would guess, a decade or more. It's on my personal computer. It's on my business computers. It backs up at regular intervals. You can force a backup if you want it sooner. And I have had to reinstall from, a digital disaster of my own when a computer died. And we had the backup to carbonite to the cloud. And so when the computer died, it was just a matter of getting a new computer and downloading all the files to the new computer, and it just works slick. So I really feel positive about my experience with carbonite to date.
Great. What's the cost? Is it a per computer cost? Is it a?
Yeah, well, it's $69, I think, for the first computer, and then they give you a discount for add-ons. So I mean, that's very reasonable for a year of storage and backup.
Sure. And it does. Go ahead.
I had another question about storage and backup for you, Erika. My state historical society has offered archival space. If we, they had started files for the Iowa Museum Association many, many years ago, and we haven't been archiving anything with them. Obviously, we have our own office space, but I'm just wondering if that might not be a good idea. I was thinking I could put, all the tax returns, for example, on a flash drive, just some kind of business files, and have them there also. That just another layer of security. What do you think?
I think that's really good. I think, did they ask you? So you talk to them about the format that they want?
I've emailed them and said, what do you think about a flash drive? Because I'm concerned about changing technology and they may not be able to read it in 10 years.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I want to go to the trouble of printing out all that paper. So I'm kind of on the fence.
Okay. So again, I'll share this digital, I'll share what you actually have to be keeping and what you not actually have to be keeping. In the I have since 2011 in 4 file cabinets behind me, all the paperwork for the last 7-8 years of the organization behind me, including the merger paperwork. And that is, thinned down. So it is a lot of paperwork that we've been saving and storing. Regular day-to-day business files don't need to be kept. What you need to keep are, the board minutes, the audits, year-end treasurer's reports are not even that important if you have actual audits. Bylaws, changes to bylaws, sometimes not even program stuff is important enough to save. So you can really slim down quite a bit. We have one whole file cabinet over there dedicated to the merger that, next year that could all go in the garbage as far as our records management policy is concerned. I'd be concerned to keep it all just on the thumb drive. More because that, oops, someone stepped on it issues more than, the technology failing along the way. It's, and if you're going to do it, make 4 copies, not just 1 thumb drive kind of thing. Yeah.
Thanks, Cindy. Erika, we have another question. This is from our friend Jonna McEntee in Ohio. She says, hello, I also want to put the suggestion out there of Google Drive as a place to not only back up files, but as a place for all files to live permanently. The benefit of having all of our files on the cloud is that they are constantly backed up and they are available from any computer for any user with access. And Google Drive is free.
So you have to apply to Google to get free Google Drive, but like they turned it around in 2 or 3 days. And we're now using it, exclusively. But again, I'm also running files that I'm working on a day-to-day basis onto an iCloud backup on top of the Google Drive. So again, belts and suspenders. But if you've not looked at Google Drive, I would strongly recommend looking at Google Drive as well. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, who else? Who else has a question?
Okay.
This is kind of fun, Erika. This is the first time we've in any kind of efficient way answered some questions that they asked. We're learning how to do this. Yay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, everybody, and thank you for sending the information. I hope I answered the questions and touched on some things. All I can say, so there was one other thing that is funny, looking at the camera here. There's, you know, etiquette, so that's what I forgot to say in the beginning. So there's hygiene, and then there's etiquette. And one of the things I asked Ruth Ann was, am I going to get to see everyone on the webinar? And Ruth Ann said no. And I said, oh, well, that might be a good thing. Because I presented at AAM in May in Phoenix, and they train, they do a required training for all AAM presenters. Before you go, you have to watch this presenter training, which was, you know, fine. And they, you know, had everyone as this really heavy platform, and everyone's pictures were up, and the default position on the connection was cameras on, audio on. And there was someone, I can't even tell you who it was, I have no idea who it was, but she did not know that her camera and her audio was on. And she was laying in bed in her pajamas, eating potato chips. And and I was like, you know, in some webinar platforms, you can like type a message to someone directly saying, you know, please turn off your video camera. I don't need to see you laying in bed eating potato chips. So I will end the webinar with that. Make sure that if you are on a camera, that you're fit for camera, right?
Thank you, Erika.
Thank you, everybody. I look forward to seeing you all
everyone.
soon.
When we say thank you very much. You guys, this will be posted on the website in a few days. So if you know anyone who needs to hear it, it'll be on the COSMA website.
Call me.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.